My name is Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with Ivory Organics, where we grow cool plants. And today I have the privilege and the honor of presenting in front of about 30 to 40 members of what's called the California Rare Fruit Growers. Check this out. This is one of their magazines right here, from the California Rare Fruit Growers. And they've just recently added a YouTube link where they're going to be doing a lot more educational videos from the website. But in this presentation, I'm going to be talking about the importance of the use of Ivory Organics, as well as talking about plant evolution, native plants, fertilizers, propagation, both sexual as well as asexual propagation, and just talking about some of the pros and cons of some of these methods for propagating plants. I hope you enjoy this video.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Charles Malky. I'm a biologist and plant expert with, as you can see, the company name, Ivory Organics. It's a 3-in-1 plant guard. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that as the meeting progresses. A little bit about myself. I've been teaching in a variety of different practice areas for, I'd say, at least the last 10, if not 15 years. But specifically for the last 4 years, I've served as a instructor in the Hollywood-Knolls. And 4 times a year, we teach the spring, summer, fall, and then winter gardening class. And it has evolved from the Hollywood-Knolls, specifically the Hollywood-Knolls was a garden club organization to kind of bring the community together back in 1930s, I believe. And since then, it kind of phased out. And when I heard that we don't have a garden club, I'm like, why don't we have it? And instead of just a once-a-year annual barbecue to bring people together, I'm like, let's get together 4 times a year, share the common interest of plants, and talk about the community issues and how we can all help one another. That alone has taken me in so many different directions within the community and throughout Los Angeles. One being just 2 weeks ago, I got to meet with the ambassador to the Los Angeles River, and we're discussing how do we restore native plants and habitat with all the development ideas that are happening all the way from the beginning of the watersheds down to Long Beach. And it's my goal to hopefully work closely with him and help facilitate that. And I know all of you have your networks and your relationships and ideas in regards to how and what can happen. I'm hesitating just because I'm trying to make sure I get all of these ideas in the right order, and I kind of want to make sure this introduction is done properly, I want to know a little bit more about you guys. I was more nervous preparing for this than any other speaking engagement ever, as this is the first time I'm in front of the rare fruit growers, of Los Angeles, and I came in with the expectation that all of you are already experts compared to at my garden club meetings. Compared to my own garden club meetings where, they're all looking at, to me and Brad, who also helps me co-chair the garden club meetings within our community. It's just so much easier. But if I can get a show of hands, how many of you here own a nursery? Are there any? Anybody that works at a nursery? None? One? So are there any people that teach, just like I'm going to be doing today, gardening topics within their communities? Areas? 1, 2? Can I see some more hands? I just like to know who the teachers are. Do any of you? They would? And then how about YouTube? Do any of you guys do anything on YouTube, like sharing your experiences in the backyard?
California Rare Fruit Growers just set up its own YouTube channel.
Fantastic. So what's the name of the YouTube channel again?
I have no idea. If you go on the crp.org site,
okay.
The first thing up on the slider is our YouTube site, but we only have 2 videos up so far. But if anybody, I'm going to get a Dropbox and anybody can send us.
So CaliforniaRareFruitGrowers.com. Go there, find the YouTube channel. I'm talking to the camera behind me so that .org. Nonprofit. And you'll find the YouTube link, and there you'll hopefully continue to learn. Maybe this video will make it up there as well. I started my YouTube channel in October of 2015, and I only put it up there specifically for the purpose of putting a few commercials to educate consumers on how the product works. A 30-second commercial, a 2-minute commercial, and a 3-minute commercial. From there, it was in about March or April of last year that I put up my first instructional how to plant a tomato video. And from there, I got my first subscriber. April of last year today. April 21st, so it's not even today, another week or two to go. So I got my first subscriber a year ago. Today I have 8,500 plus subscribers. We average between 4,000 and 6,000 views per day. It's been a wonderful tool for communicating to the world about gardening techniques and lessons, and I feel like what I'm bringing to it is, aside from my biology degree, having graduated from UC Irvine, I was pre-med. I worked in surgery. I did a lot of experimenting with different antibiotics and value to that in different settings. And this product is kind of an evolution off of some of the concepts that I learned back in college. And then from there, I've been all over the country with just different projects. But for the last 5 years, I've been dedicated exclusively to basically teaching. Some of the topics we're going to discuss include, one, we're going to talk about IV Organics, what it is, and how is it different than what exists on the market. We're going to discuss plant evolution, fertilizers, NPK, is that enough for your plants? And more specifically, we're going to talk about plant propagation. Here's a question I like asking is, how many of you guys, I want to make sure I phrase this properly, I'm just going to say the question. Do plants have sex?
All kinds.
Question?
All kinds.
They do? I want you guys to know that plants, like animals, do have sex, and they do have male and female parts, and there is a lot of things that, what I bring when I discuss plants is I try to bring them back to life, that plants do have hormones. They have the cytokinins and the auxins, and they've got all of these different things happening within it, just like any other living animal. That plants also similarly have hormones. They similarly have sex. They similarly, propagate in different ways, as do animals as well. And we're going to be going into a little bit more detail on that specifically, so that when you go back to your garden, you'll look at them hopefully a little bit differently. We're also going to be discussing seeds. Did you know that you can actually plant some seeds and they'll turn into genetically identical plants to the parent plant you brought it from? Have any of you heard that before? You can plant the seed, like most of us should have learned if we've been doing this long enough. A seed is typically a combination of male and female parts. So it's just like our children. They're never the same. All the people around the world are all different because of genetics with the combination of male and female parts and the way those two combine. We'll go into more detail on that as well, but there are some seeds you can plant and they'll turn into genetically identical plants as the parent. And we'll talk about that concept later on as well. And then we're going to talk about asexual propagation, which is the cuttings and the grafting and all these other things as well. So that's kind of the background on what we're going to learn in the next 90 minutes, I think is what I have, right? The first thing I want to do is pass out these brochures. If you can pass those around that way, and I'm going to pass these around this way. And I'm just going to start talking while you get these in your hands, but IV Organics, it says protection against damaging sunburn insects and rodents for uses on your roses, fruit, nut trees, ornamental trees, and shrubs. It's a non-toxic, environmentally safe and organic product. I'm just reading the front of this. IV Organics was created to basically replace the use of latex white paint for use on your trees. If you take a look at the back of it, and I'm an organic gardener as well, I didn't want to put something that's carcinogenic, and then if you research more on latex white paint, then they add algicides and fungicides, and algicides are plants that, if you apply it, is damaging to plant tissues as well. So I'm like, latex white paint cannot be the best product. And then I started exploring, how can I do this as an organic formulation? And as we did so, my high school, not high school, but UC Irvine years came back where I wanted to create a product. And the project I was working on back in college, and I never shared this with anyone. This is the first time I'm even sharing this relationship, but the antibiotics that we're working with in college at the university we're trying to insert something at the surgical site within the person's body that'll stay there and last there for several weeks, rather than taking antibiotics 3 times a day after a surgery and your body just keeps on breaking it down. The goal was wherever the surgery site was, we want to put antibiotics in there, we want it to stay there. We're going to encapsulate it, and this was the chemical. It was called lipid encapsulated amikacin. So lipid is fat, encapsulated amikacin's inside the fat. So it was basically like an oil mixed with antibiotics, and the body would break down the oils over a period of time, releasing antibiotics at the site. The goal with the product is to also offer that same time release with these 7 oils that are in the product. I don't know if they're listed on here, the oils, but I'm going to look at the can now. The 7 oils that are in here include castor oil. And when you look for repellents at any box store or nursery that's organic, specific for repelling rodents, they'll usually sell you a bag of a granular mix of something where the active ingredient is castor oil. And I think it's usually mixed with like corn feed or something. And you scatter it, you water it down, and it makes everything in the soil taste bad. Any of those critters that are eating the earthworms or any other insects that are in the soil, they're now coated in castor oil and they're going to taste bad and they're going to go to your neighbor's property. And that's the way it functions as a repellent. The castor oil in here serves a similar function of keeping rodents from girdling your trees that are coated with the Ivory Organics. So it's Ivory Organics, which offers the sunblock protection, which is the way you typically use your latex white paint, but it also has castor oil to keep the rodents from gnawing at your tree, which is a typical phenomenon in winter. When the rodents are starving the most, they'll typically resort to gnawing on your tree to get those saps and the sugars out of your tree. The other oils that are in here are cinnamon oil, clove oil, cedarwood oil, and I always like emphasis on cedarwood oil being the trees in Lebanon, for example, they live 1,000+ years, again, because of the oils. The redwoods are, again, similar in the sense that it's the oils in it that offer the defense. And so all of these oils are serving a defense. Garlic oil, peppermint oil, and rosemary oil. So it's those oils that are inside the product. They're to defend and protect the plant from the rodents. And then secondly, also, if there's any damage to the bark, sometimes when you prune the branch, or especially it's when the city people that prune the trees, that are not professional with their work, but they'll prune the tree, the branches fall, and it tears along the along the tree trunk, and now exposing a lot of area for now beetles and termites to get into it. If that's the case, it could take a year. More realistically, it'll take 5 to 10 years for that wound to callus over from that, the cambium tissues to eventually grow and fill in that damaged area. A pruned branch as well, and I've done some videos on YouTube as well where I walk through Griffith Park, and I show all of these, oak trees and sycamore trees that have been pruned, and again, we're talking about branches that are about this big. Maybe, it was a branch in the past that broke in half, but they cleaned it up, so it was a nice clean prune. But after 10 to 15 years, the surface of wood got soft, and now it's an entryway, and you can see the ants harvesting the termites that are within, beetles and whatever else, and you can just see all the tunnels of what's happening now within the heart of the tree. So the goal again with the product is if you have any pruned branches that are not going to heal within the next few months, you coat it to basically keep all of the insects out of your tree while the plant then heals over. So those are just a few of the concepts. If we open it up, you can see that these 3 pages are basically these 3 banners, and then on the back it talks about protection from sunburn. Sunburn is summer. Sun scald is a winter phenomenon where, and it's not so much here in Los Angeles, but if you can imagine, let's say, more like grapevine area where you can have an 80-degree day followed by a freezing night. So on that 80-degree day, the plant's waking up, the saps are moving up the plant, and then nighttime freezes, and then the bark just cracks open. Those cracks could be mitigated by coating it, whether you use paint or a product such as Ivory Organics, to basically reflect some of that excess heat to minimize the risk of cracking on those sun scald days where, you got those hot days followed by freezing nights. Insects, rodents, premature blooms. Another reason for painting your plants is premature blooms, and farmers will sometimes coat their tree trunks and lower branches to keep their plant cooler during those initial days of spring. Sometimes, again, we have those days that it feels like it's spring, but then the next week is windy and freezing cold again, and it damages the yield of fruits you'll have because it prematurely bloomed. By coating your plant, it'll help keep the plant cooler and make sure that the plant goes into bloom closer to when it's consistently warm and then it puts out those blooms. So that's the reason I've included premature blooms, exposed prune surfaces we just discussed, and the last one is coating your bulbs as well, which is on a couple of these. It's actually, so it's inside of your flyer. Some of our customers actually coat their tulip bulbs, their potato bulbs, their garlic bulbs, or whatever else. If there's a risk of rodents eating and consuming your bulbs, you can actually just take the product such as this, and when you actually get it, these are the two things that you'll see. And by also not having water, there's two reasons for not having water in it. One is, once you add water to it, the ability of the product to adhere to the plant breaks down after about 2 weeks. So it's recommended that once you fill the can up with water with the paint, it's not paint powder, but with the powder and then the oil, these are the 7 oils that are in this glass vial. Once you fill it up with water, either you use it within 2 weeks or you freeze it. By freezing, it'll last indefinitely, and then when you're ready to use it again, you'll thaw it. But these are the two things you'll find within the container. And any questions on anything I've said so far, just relating to this? Yes?
The powder you said, first you said it was paint powder, then you said it wasn't paint powder. What is it?
Just powder. I don't like using the word paint because paint sounds chemical. So it's just, it's the powder. So by adding the Ivory Organics powder with water, it'll create a brush-on solution. Another thing which reminds me is the product could be used as a tree paste, depending on how much water you add. For example, you can fill up about 1/3 of the can, and it's on the directions in the back. But you can fill up the can with about 1/3 of water and mix it again with the powder as well as the oil and create a tree paste if you need something more of a paste-like consistency. You fill up the can, and it'll make your brush-on solution instead of paint-on solution, brush-on solution. And the last one is foliar spray. The foliar spray, I would apply it to my tomatoes when I transplant them, peppers, flowers, any trees. The little fig tree that I brought here, I sprayed it just before I came in. I sprayed it out on the wood chips. The point is it creates a light organic sunblock on the leaf so that it's less heat stressed by being coated. So you'll take a look at that, and then a couple of the other trees that you see behind that are just sticks are just going into growth. Did anybody see it or want to guess what trees those are? Yeah, these are my apple trees. And it's my last topic is talking about grafting, and I also have a grafting technique I've been using since 7th grade, 8th grade. And I've just shared it on YouTube for the first time ever a couple of months ago. One of my YouTube videos that everybody loves is I've got a fig tree in my backyard where I pruned it down. It was 8 to 10 feet tall. I pruned it down to about 1 foot or 2 off the ground. We created the 2 branches, which then grew again another 15 to 20 feet, which I cut back down to about 2 to 3 feet this time, which then created a nice 5 branches all in like this zone over here. I've taken those 5 branches, and it was originally a green fig from a cutting, and I've now grafted it with a black fig, a brown fig, the Cadota fig, which is green, the tiger fig, the panache, and the 5th variety, which I don't know. But all the viewers are like watching in anticipation to see, hopefully I'm going to get to enjoy 5 flavors of fig by this summer, being that I've started my grafting project, that early. So that'll be something you can also see on YouTube. Any other questions in regards to the Ivory Organics? Yes, sir.
Look at all the oils, but what's in the powder?
So the powder is about 90-some% also plant material. I know mica is like a soil or dirt, like a clay component to it. There's milk proteins that are in it as well. And the other thing we've also done is we passed all of our ingredients through the Washington State Department of Agriculture, and they gave us, we got this mid last year, registered material for use in organic agricultural seal, which is equivalent to the, what's the other organic, armory, for example. So now we've got farmers that are buying it and using it for agricultural purposes within their farms. Rather than them paying for it to clear, we paid for it so that they can immediately use it. Yeah, Bruce.
I was a little confused. you say it can be used as both a deterrent. I assume it's best to be sprayed when the trees are dormant, but then you were also talking about using it as a foliant spray. So which is the more effective time to put it out? Because normally, as you suggested earlier, a lot of times it's the winter time when we get the pests that are going to be collaring or
girdling,
barks. Better.
So when's the best time of the year to use it? And I would say it depends on your garden. Some of your gardens don't have issues with rodents. I actually lost one of my trees to, you guys would maybe know this better, mole or vole. Which one? I know one of them's herbivore and the other one's carnivore, but one of them actually girdled one of my lemon trees, and it killed it. And it was not coated, by the way. In regards to best time of year, if you know you've got a rodent issue, and it typically happens in the winter, then you're going to want to do it before winter and make sure you coat those bottom 2 to 3 feet. I use my product as a foliar spray on my avocados, especially when I know we're going to hit the mid-90s and up, to make sure that my leaves don't burn. Once they actually get leaf burn, those are your leaves now for the next year at least. And I've shared, the results of some of that. There's some of my leaves that got sunburned, the smallest ones that I didn't coat. But once you actually spray it, let's say mid-spring or early summer before we get that record hot, hot heat waves, if you spray it before, your plants are coated for the entire season and beyond. I've seen some, what's that? Even with rain, it'll hold on to the plant. And the product, aside from the cans, which I'm explaining, it does also come in a spray bottle such as this.
Deter them?
It will deter pretty much any and every insect. The reason for the 7 oils, and you can actually research this, and I was trying to break it down and have a handout for you explaining all of this, but each oil defends against 12 to 20 insects. And you're doing these all organically as well. So I know someone, I won't say name or point, but someone actually before this presentation said, I won't use paint, I don't want to kill my earthworms or anything else. All of this is breaking down in the soil into more food to feed the soil biology. I'm against doing anything, and I feel almost misleading with some of these labels that you see at some of these box stores where it says, oh, it kills these 10 insects, but it's doing more than just killing those 10 insects. It's killing everything. Like when you spray it, it's killing everything. Like you just said, I don't want any biology in my garden. I just want to see plants with no earthworms, no beneficial bacteria, no beneficial fungi. I don't want nematodes. I don't want anything in my garden. I just want plants. That would be a grower that specifically uses chemicals. And I mean, your plants will just never be as healthy if that's going to be a gardening method. Yes, sir. Yes, you.
How about bees?
So bees, good question. So people ask, when is the best time to apply the product? When my plants are flowering, and again, you're adding 7 new scents to the plant when you spray it. So now, to avoid any confusion with, I want to pollinate the citrus tree, but it smells like garlic and cedarwood and all these other things, and maybe the bee is like, I don't want to pollinate the garlic. I would say for that sake, while it's in bloom time, I would leave it alone. But again, if you needed to use the product, or again, you're installing it or whatever else, and you're trying to relieve the stress, if you simply apply it in the morning before the bees visit or at the end of the day, the product's going to dry on and it's done. The flower, if it's closed at this time, is going to open up fresh. The bee is going to enter the flower, not go onto the plant and the leaves and the branches that you've coated. So again, I would say very little to no interference with bees. But again, when it comes to applying it, just before the bees visit in the morning and late enough in the afternoon. What I wanted to talk about as well is the product. Somebody asked me, how do I get your product? And I've brought with me, I think, enough for everybody here. The retailers that we have include these guys over here, Home Depot, Amazon, Sears, Arbico Organics, Harmony Farm, Supply Nursery, Walmart, and Rakuten I think there's still a handful more, but that was printed out earlier this year. One more question.
I wanted to clarify how often you have to apply it, once per season?
Oh, so yeah, so it goes back to Bruce, like when and how. I use it as I need it. The avocados, for example, and maybe give me an example after I finish this, but my avocado that I planted about 3 years ago on my property, the first thing I did was I coated the trunk, which it wasn't much, it was probably 2 or 3 feet of trunk, then it was just too many leaves. And then I used a teaspoon or 2 of the pint can to spray bottles and then sprayed the entire leaves. Now I've got a much cooler product, and And here's the other question. When is the best time to plant your trees in your property? Somebody's got to know the answer to this. Spring, summer, fall, or winter? When?
Depends on what you're planting.
It depends on what you're planting. Good. But just general. Let's go back to just generality. Best time to plant a tree?
Talk about tropical trees if we are rare fruit growers.
I'll give a tree, an avocado tree. What's the best time to plant it? So I would say the majority of the people, yesterday, the majority of the people, yeah, but before the rain, for sure. The majority of the people would say fall is the best time for installing a tree, just generally. I'm sure there's exceptions. There's always exceptions, and we're going to learn about a lot of exceptions today. But with the fall being, the plant's going to have an opportunity to, get its roots in the ground, grow a little bit, not deal with the sun stress of summer. But unlike the generality of when you should be planting your trees, most people like planting in spring and summer. Like it's now the soil is dry, it's enjoyable to go outside. I know a lot of people that don't even go in the garden all of winter, half of fall. They're just waiting for spring to now play with the soil and do all the things that they do, myself included. So in regards to application, again, for the avocado, I would paint it, spray it, and then wait for, if it's got a large amount of new flush of growth and new leaves and stuff, and I know there's a heat wave, I'll just spray it one more time. In regards to coating the trunk, 1 time per year is sufficient. And the product says you can use it as often as 3 times a year. And again, the reason for the 3 times is as it grows, or if you know you're wanting to repel against rodents, for example, the oils will eventually break down, so you're gonna have to just recoat it to make sure it's there, and that you're tasting the ingredients in there that repels them.
Is that eventually like 2 weeks, 2 months, a year?
Once you apply it?
Yeah.
So when I spray the leaves, as you'll see with the avocado, I mean not the avocado, but the fig tree, it actually is not so noticeable on these leaves, but on citrus, I meant to bring a small citrus plant as well. And you'll see it on some of my YouTube videos. There's some leaves I've sprayed back in the summer of last year, and you can still see like the white dots of the organic spray that's still on the leaves, even now, through the entire very rainy winter season. So the product does stick, and it will be there. Some people are like, I don't want a white tree. It won't be white. It'll just as you had sunblock to your own skin, it'll lighten, and it'll help keep the plant several degrees cooler during those hottest days. And you'll see your plant perform a lot better during the summer than having to just stay alive. And instead it can focus more on growth and supporting its fruits and doing all those other things.
I was going to ask you, do you just spray the top of the leaf surface?
Yeah, it's just a top. There's no reason to go underneath unless, again, the goal is pest control. You could. I have to move on. One more.
Okay. Can you comment a bit more on the anti-transpirant function?
Yes. So this question just came up just recently with one of the nurseries. We're talking to Peaceful Valley Nursery, and she was talking about how can you possibly add paint to the product without it like blocking all the pores, and how is the plant going to function anymore? Our product kind of goes on more like a chalk, even though it still holds on. Latex white paint goes on as, think about your latex white gloves. It's plastic. You're coating your plant with plastic. The other thing with latex white paint is when you're painting your building, your intention is you're going to paint it and hopefully it's going to offer that protection for the next 10 years, 100 years. It's going to exist for a long time. Our product, again, is breathable. Another thing too with pruned branches, if you research this, the majority of research will say do not coat your pruned branches, again because you're trapping moisture. Our product doesn't do that as well. It allows water to pass so that it doesn't create rot on the other side of the pruned branch. So great question. I'll take all the questions in the world afterwards, but I want to try to hopefully get the rest of this content out there to you. It's 11 o'clock right now. Bruce, what time am I done, or what time are you guys done?
11:45.
And then is there anybody else that's going to speak within that? So I get the next 45 minutes. Thank you guys. So here's my next handout. Actually, before you pass it, if you can just hold it. 1 second. I want to share this idea with you first real quick. Avocados. Do you guys know the types of avocados? There's a type what and a type what? You guys say it. So type A and a type B. Does anybody here know the difference between the type A and type B, like how and why and what it is? Is the type A the male or the female?
You got a 50% chance.
You guys, okay. Is there anybody else that wants to add to it? We're going to talk into a lot of detail, and it's on the back side of your flyer. That's why I said like to hold it. But we're going to talk about the avocado flower. But the avocado plant, I thought, is like the biggest mystery in regard.
So if you've enjoyed this educational video by Ivory Organics, be sure to like it. And most importantly, by subscribing below, you'll be connected to all of these other educational videos. Thanks again for watching. Happy gardening.